The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're just impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailor stories, the Kraken reached 5,000 feet in length. That's almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legend said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah, in all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need lots of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. Many people are starving because of the reduction of large fish in the ocean. Urban economies that rely on fishing will be in decline. Prices for small fish around the world are getting more expensive because it's unsafe to fish. To defeat the Kraken, you need powerful weapons, but the monster is tough to catch. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. So, what can you do? You can't track the Kraken because it approaches from the depths, not the surface. Though you may be able to tell that the monster is somewhere nearby if a lot of fish surface. When the Kraken swims, it scares all the fish in the vicinity. But it might already be too late. A huge tentacle emerges from the water, resembling a high tower. This tower falls on the deck of the ship, shattering it. The sailors scream and run. The Kraken lands a second blow, and the vessel is almost capsized. Next, the Kraken wraps its giant tentacles around the ship and pulls it to the bottom. Oh boy! What if the sailors managed to detach the ship from the tentacles of this monster? With the help of powerful weapons, the ship's crew strikes back. The Kraken retreats under the water. It's hurt, angry. It seems the battle is over, but here comes the worst. A whirlpool forms beside the ship. Thanks to its considerable weight, when the Kraken dives, it creates a whirlpool behind it. Like a drain in a giant bathtub, this whirlpool sucks the ship down. The battle with the Kraken is lost. Well, that was unfortunate. You might be able to defeat the monster if you can anticipate its attack in advance. But the Kraken can see you and your ship before you can see it. Colossal squids live in deep waters, and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. Around the world, cargo transportation by ship is declining. Airlines provide the only safe connection between the continents. This will increase air pollution. The most successful enemy of the Kraken is submarines. They travel at great depths and are equipped with powerful echolocators to help detect the Kraken in advance. Subs are well armed too, and the round metal body is not so easy to destroy. A single Kraken may be defeated by a submarine, but what if there are several sea monsters? 3 Kraken can wrap their tentacles around the submarine and drag it deeper into the water where the pressure will destroy their enemy. In other words, they'll have a crush on you. The existence of the Kraken will have dramatically changed the development of many countries. What if Christopher Columbus, on his famous journey, noticed an island that he thought was the New World? He approaches it, but tentacles emerge from the island and sink Columbus's ship. The colonization of North America is delayed, maybe until airplanes are invented. And the first crewed flight wasn't until the 20th century. There would be no Hollywood. There would be no hamburgers, no famous American music playing. There wouldn't be YouTube, which means you wouldn't be watching this video right now. Worst of all, the internet wouldn't exist either. And all this because of one stupid monster squid. The Vikings wouldn't sail on their long ships to raid and settle foreign territories. The history of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and other Nordic countries would have changed drastically. Hey, maybe the Titanic wouldn't have hit an iceberg, but a giant sea monster instead. Though, it's unlikely that people would take trips on huge ocean liners in a world where the Kraken exists. Maybe though, the Kraken isn't all that aggressive. Still, they need a lot of food, and because of the growing population of these monsters, there will be much less food in the ocean. Therefore, the Kraken will increasingly come to the surface for hunting. In the future, the Kraken will migrate closer to the shore. In many countries, people then are not allowed to swim in the ocean. Imagine floating on the waves and a monster the size of a skyscraper is swimming right below you. Relaxing at sea and on the beach will no longer be popular. Many countries that live off tourism become impoverished. When the Krakens grow hungrier, they try to capture prey from land. A huge squid could attack small port cities. Houses, docks, streets, everything can be crushed. A tremendous amount of plastic is thrown into the ocean near the coasts of large countries. Billions of tons of plastic will bother the Kraken. An angry, hungry monster can attack bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge. Imagine that a huge squid surrounds the bridge and blocks all traffic. Some of these squids could break the strong cables with their power, and the entire structure would collapse into the water. Ooh! It's good that the Kraken doesn't really exist to swim in our seas and oceans, at least as far as we know. But could the monster have actually existed? Legends stretch back years, but scientific evidence appeared in the middle of the 19th century. In 1857, a 3-inch diameter squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid has been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years, and we still don't know what max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bathyscapes and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. The legend of the Kraken probably appeared because of a real colossal squid. People in the past didn't know about these creatures' existence, so when they saw one for the first time, they described it as a massive, terrible monster. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, because the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim. Like my nephew, Peter.
The sky is burning. The world's oceans are foaming. Thunder and lightning are shaking the air. Two of the most terrible and powerful monsters collide in a duel. A harbinger of the end of the world. Just the sight of this monster can drive anyone mad. Great and atrocious Cthulhu. And the biggest squid on the planet is fighting against it. A beast that knows no fear, because it's fear itself. The cause of 1,000 shipwrecks, the mighty and hideous Kraken. Let the most epic fight in the history of the universe begin. You're on a fishing boat, sailing in a calm ocean. The water is crystal clear, and there's no wind. The sea merges with the horizon. The land isn't visible, and you feel free. You look over the side of the boat and notice something strange in the water. You're floating in the center of a huge black spot, surrounded by a wide field of green. What's that? Oil spilled into the water that took on such a strange hue? Then why is it so perfectly round? Suddenly, you realize what it is, and the blood freezes in your veins. The black circle is the pupil in the center of a huge green eye. The thing that's looking right at you from the water right now is so big that your ship looks like a speck next to it. It's the Kraken. But don't worry, The monster isn't interested in a small prey like you. The Kraken has been sinking ships for centuries and never met any decent resistance. There are thousands of boats lying on the sea floor, but what's the point? The Kraken longs for a real challenge, but can't find it. The largest mammal on Earth is the blue whale, which is no more than a pet goldfish for the Kraken. Even a Megalodon could easily lose to the tentacled beast in battle. Maybe look for some great monster on the bottom of the Mariana Trench? No, the pressure is too high, and there's almost nothing living there. But then, the Kraken has an idea. It goes to the most remote place on Earth, a place rarely visited and poorly explored. This place is called Point Nemo. Here, deep below the ocean surface, lies the ancient city of Relia, built long before the appearance of humans, and amidst the slumbering ruins, the huge and powerful Cthulhu is dreaming. This ancient demigod has been resting here for hundreds of millennia. All this time, Cthulhu has been waiting for its hour to wreak havoc on Earth. It's sleeping, but even in its dreams, Cthulhu communicates with members of its very own cult following. It uses telepathy to get into their minds and make them do atrocious things. But all of a sudden, Cthulhu's slumber is interrupted. Who dares wake it so rudely? Cthulhu opens its angry red eyes, overgrown with seaweed, and sees a huge squid in front of it. The Kraken has finally found a worthy opponent. Immediately, it pounces on Cthulhu and wraps its tentacles around the monster's head. The fight begins. Cthulhu heavily pushes off from the sea floor and rushes to the surface, dragging the Kraken with it. Two giant monsters, larger than the tallest skyscrapers, emerge from the water. The sea is raging, and clouds are gathering over the battlefield. Enraged, Cthulhu strikes at the Kraken, but it doesn't seem to feel anything. Lightning flashes in the black and churning clouds. Cthulhu tries to tear the Kraken off itself, but the squid's tentacles firmly grasp the green monster. Meanwhile, you're on your way to Point Nemo to watch the battle unfold. You need to sail from the coast of Chile, and strange things are happening there right now. Hundreds of sailors are climbing on board dozens of ships. There are ordinary fishing vessels, as well as heavily armed and loaded Navy ships. And when you ask anyone where all these people are going, they all give you a dark look and answer, into eternity. The Kraken is taking the upper hand, and Cthulhu calls its followers to help. It hopes the ships will be able to help defeat the enemy, but it'll be 2 days before the first of them arrive from land. Cthulhu finally tears off the Kraken and throws it into the water. The squid attacks again, but Cthulhu grabs it by the tentacles and lifts it above its head. Lightning strikes the Kraken, but it's no more than a spark to the giant monster. At the same time, the entranced sailors stand on decks and look in the direction of the battlefield. At night, they fall asleep and see the same dream about the ancient city of Relia. In the center of it, there's a twisted chapel, and inside, Cthulhu sits on its throne, calling its followers. Day and night and day, the monsters have been fighting each other with their last strength. And at last, tiny dots gather around them. The ships have arrived. They're ready to attack the Kraken, and Cthulhu gives them a mental order. But the Kraken has its own ace up its sleeve. It hadn't been sinking ships just for fun. Very often, it saved thousands of marine creatures caught in fishing nets. And now, they and their offspring from all over the ocean come to help the Kraken. Huge octopuses, blue whales, great white sharks, electric eels. They're all attacking enemy ships. Whales are ramming the submarines, and eels are turning vehicle engines off with their electric discharges. Suddenly, the Kraken dives under the water. Did it give up? Got scared? Not likely. Cthulhu looks out into the ocean and waits for the squid to attack. The Kraken swims beneath the fighting people and fish. It starts twisting its tentacles, creating a huge whirlpool. The ships are doomed now, and Cthulhu can only rely on itself. The Kraken is a powerful creature, but it's an animal after all, while Cthulhu is incredibly intelligent, albeit malevolent. It understands that the Kraken is a sea monster and can be defeated once on land. Cthulhu's roar shakes the skies. Lightning bolts strike the ocean. The water is boiling. The ancient city of Relaya is rising from the bottom of the sea. The Kraken can't escape here. It needs water. The squid fights Cthulhu with the last of its strength, but without its element, it quickly loses. Cthulhu is victorious. Now, being woken, it's going to destroy the rest of the world, as was foretold. But the fight couldn't have gone unnoticed. Thanks to satellite data, the world already knows what's happened, and a plan has been devised to put down the ancient monster in case it wins. Fighter jets enter the scene and attack Cthulhu. The monster raises its arms to the sky. Clouds are gathering around it. An electric discharge sparkles in the clouds, and electricity disappears within a few hundred miles, including the electronics on board the jets. They're falling down into the water. There's no way to defeat the mythic beast. But what is it? Satellites are suddenly falling from the sky in dozens. Cthulhu didn't know that Point Nemo is the dumping ground for space debris. Since this is the farthest point from Earth, it's safe to drop idle satellites here. Right now, hundreds of them are falling on the ancient city and bombarding the monster. Disoriented by the sudden assault, Cthulhu retreats back underwater along with its city. Then and there, it decides to go back to sleep for another 1,000 years and wait for a perfect moment to ruin the world. Cthulhu's mind-controlling ability made all the witnesses of the battle forget what they saw. Humanity is again unaware of the dangers from the depths. Cthulhu doesn't want people to be ready for its awakening. If you enter these coordinates in the GPS, you'll see where Point Nemo is. In 1997, oceanographers recorded a mysterious sound from the depths of the sea. It was called the bloop and can be easily found on the internet. This event led many people to believe in the existence of Cthulhu, but the panic didn't last long. It turned out that the bloop was the sound of a glacier splitting. Or maybe it's Cthulhu that made people think that way. Who knows? The first thing you feel is some heaviness around your body, as if you're sleeping under a soft but weighted blanket. It feels nice, and you're too lazy to do anything. Fortunately, you gather enough strength to move the blanket. You open your eyes, and it's weird. You're surrounded by some blue glow. You want to rub your eyes and discover that you have tentacles instead of hands. How about skipping the part where you're terrified and can't believe you've turned into the Kraken? After a couple of days of existential horror, panic, and total madness, you finally calm down. Now, let's figure out what it's like to be the most terrifying ocean monster. So, that heavy blanket is water pressure. It's colossal at the depth where you're hiding. Few living beings can withstand it. Take a passenger car down there, and it will burst apart under the heavy weight of the water. But you're the Kraken. You're more powerful than any car. Your body doesn't collapse in such conditions. Your thick elastic skin can withstand any pressure, and strong muscles allow you to move freely here. And here's the thing with the blue glow. You're so deep down that sunlight almost doesn't penetrate here. It's hard to tell where's up and down because of the water pressure. But fortunately, you have huge eyes that, like the lenses of a telescope, catch the light coming from the surface. An ordinary person can't see anything except darkness at this depth. But you have something like a night vision device built into your eyes, so you see this blue glow. There's almost nothing at this depth. It's only endless, heavy emptiness. You can see a few fish and several wrecks of sunken ships. The sea creatures you meet here are pretty unusual. These are anglers and all sorts of transparent squid. Come to think of it, giant squid are your only friends here, and you're like a king to them. In general, hanging out close to the ocean floor is pretty boring. You sleep and eat, that's all. It would be best if you swam higher to get more snacks. You rise, and the water around you becomes brighter. More and more sunlight reaches this place, and you finally meet other inhabitants of the ocean. Turtles, sharks, jellyfish, octopuses, and stingrays dart away as soon as they notice you. All of them except jellyfish. They don't care. You look for a place to eat and notice a shoal of fish. Great, here's lunch. After you've eaten, you stay there, scaring fish and dolphins just for fun. You like the way you can control your tentacles. You have 10 of them. It's impossible to put into words what you feel, but imagine that the fingers on your hands have become huge, like pool cues. And it's incredible. You can extend your tentacles to be as long as a passenger Boeing. Also, you have suction cups on them. You can grab anything so tightly that no creature will slip away from you. Thanks to the tentacles, you swim fast. First, you move them in different directions, then press them together, propelling yourself forward. Strong streams of water that you create push all the fish aside. You notice a blue whale. It's the largest mammal in the world, but next to you, it looks like a puppy. So, you swim, eat, scare fish and other marine creatures, and that's it. Your life is kind of boring. And how long will it last? 100 years? 1,000? You want to have some fun. So you swim up to the surface and get almost blinded by bright sunlight. You try to get used to it. The water is quiet. There's no wind. You look around and notice a tiny dot ahead. Wow, it's a large wooden fishing ship with sails. Finally, you'll have some fun. You can't wait to see people and tell them about yourself. So you're happily swimming toward it. But if someone was watching you, you'd probably look pretty scary. You get stuck in a fishing net. It's thin, so you easily tear it apart and rise to the surface. The people on the deck are terrified. They scream and run in different directions. Hey guys, where are you going? I just want to hang out with you. They seem so small. Fishers throw harpoons and axes at you, but you don't feel any pain. You put one tentacle on the wooden deck and accidentally break it. The whole ship is fragile, like a matchbox. Okay, it's better not to touch it. You turn around and accidentally flip the ship over. All the people that were on board are now in the water. Fortunately, you have enough tentacles to save them all. You catch every fisher and see the horror in their eyes. Someone even faints. You put the ship back on the water and help the people return to the deck. Then you push the boat away and swim toward land. But you decide not to show yourself to people on the shore. Those sailors you saved will tell everyone how they survived meeting a giant monster. Everyone will talk about how terrible you are, but no one will mention that you also saved them. How unfair. You return to the ocean depths and fall asleep. Some strange sounds wake you up. It's like water dripping from a tap into a sink. You open your eyes and see faint flashes around. Oh, well, that's interesting. You swim up and realize that a thunderstorm has woken you up. It seems rather severe. The sky is black and the waves are huge. You notice a big vessel sailing amongst this chaos. This ship is different from the one you've seen before. It's made of iron and it has no sails because it's a modern cargo ship. It seems that you've been asleep for a couple of 100 years. The people on board notice you and fire a signal flare. A bright red light blinds you. You spread your tentacles and accidentally push the ship. It's heavy and doesn't flip over. It seems that technology was developing while you were sleeping. The storm is getting stronger. The ship is rolling from side to side. You try to hold it with your tentacles, but it scares the people on board. They scream, and you understand their reaction. A colossal monster has come out of the black depths and grabbed their ship. It's unpleasant to see that they're afraid of you, so you decide to swim away. Offended, you're hiding close to the ocean floor. It turns out it's not much fun being the Kraken. You can only hang out with fish, but they can't talk. People are afraid of you, and you don't want to make them uncomfortable. You feel so alone in this world. You eat your lunch and go back to sleep.
Hey, Mr. Kraken, can you hear me?
A voice says. You wake up and shudder, terrified. Who said that? Were all the stories about the Flying Dutchman true? Have you just heard some phantom speaking to you? I understand you're confused, Mr. Kraken, so swim up to the surface and you'll find out everything. A few minutes later, you come out of the water and see a huge flying ship. It's floating right above the water. But the most fantastic thing is that people on the deck are not afraid of you. They look at you with interest, and even with some sympathy. You notice a man in a strange helmet among them. Hi, it's me talking to you, thanks to this telepathy device. You can think about anything too, and I'll hear you. It's the 24th century. People have invented technologies for communicating with animals and fish. They found out that almost all creatures have no thoughts and live following their instincts. But then, people detected some brain activity coming from the ocean depths. They discovered you. You seem to be one of the most intelligent beings on the planet, and people are very interested in communicating with you. Finally, the centuries of your loneliness are over.
It was just a couple of hours before midnight. Some of the 2,200 passengers of a large, luxurious ocean liner were still partying in the beautiful first-class lounges. The rest were asleep in their beds, some of them in spacious cabins filled with paintings and decorated with ornate carvings, others in tiny rooms below sea level. All of these people had only one thing in common. On that chilly April night, all of them were heading from Southampton in England to New York City. The ship was called the Titanic, and at that time, it was considered unsinkable. At the very beginning of the journey, the liner nearly collided with the steamship New York. Luckily, the Titanic managed to pass by the other vessel with several feet to spare. A common sigh of relief escaped the passengers crowding the liner's decks. Little did they know what was awaiting them in the near future. Several days later, when the ship was already in the North Atlantic Ocean, 370 miles away from Newfoundland, the unthinkable happened. At about 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, those who were still awake were knocked over by some mysterious and powerful force. Passengers who were already in their beds got catapulted to the floor. Screams and total confusion. Months before the disaster struck, a ginormous chunk of ice had broken away from a glacier in southwest Greenland. It was made of the snow that had fallen about 100,000 years ago, when mammoths were still roaming the planet. When the iceberg just started its journey, it was a huge thing, almost 1,700 feet long. It also weighed 75 million tons. But then it floated much further to the south than normal, right into the area the Titanic had to cross on its way to North America. Even after melting into the water for months, the iceberg still weighed an impressive 1.5 million tons. Its top part was towering over the water for almost 100 feet. Even so, it looked harmless next to the massive ocean liner, but only at first glance. What people saw was just a tiny part of a jumbo piece of ice. The largest part of any iceberg is hidden under the surface, with a mere 1/10 visible above the water. The Titanic iceberg wasn't an exception. The moment the ship collided with it, the vessel was doomed. Unable to divert its course, it crashed into the ice, rupturing at least 5 of its hull compartments. They immediately started to fill with water, which then flooded each succeeding compartment. The front of the ship started to sink. This raised the back part almost vertically into the air, and then, with a deafening roar, the liner broke in half. The rest is history. But what if what we know about the disaster is not true? What if the ship hadn't been wrecked by an iceberg? What if it had been something more treacherous and way more alive that sank the Titanic? Far, far beneath the surface, in the ocean's dim, dark depths, a shadow lurks. Imagine an enormous creature, round, flat, and full of arms, or rather, powerful tentacles. It resembles a giant squid or octopus, but much, much bigger. Its descriptions go from as long as 10 ships to 1.5 miles long. Rumor has it unlucky sailors sometimes mistake the sea monster for an island, but instead of stepping on dry land, they're dragged down into the ocean. These people meet the Kraken, a legendary creature feared by everyone who sets off on a sea voyage. Usually, the Kraken haunts the seas off the coasts of Norway through Iceland and all the way to Greenland. Who knows what has brought the beast further away from home? The waters of the North Atlantic are just as chilly, and the creature feels good and curious. Once it notices the Titanic, the ship has no chances to escape its attention. It's dark. That's why those on the ocean liner don't notice the first alarm bells. The water around the ship starts to bubble. If you strain your ears, you can hear bizarre gurgling sounds. If you strain your eyes, you can see thousands of fish and jellyfish rising to the surface. They feel something's up down below. But even if someone on the Titanic noticed this hectic activity, they wouldn't have time to get out of the way of the horrifying beast. Its enormous size and super long and strong tentacles turn it into a predator you can't escape. A 9-year-old boy standing on the deck knows nothing about the sea monster. He's just watching countless small islands rising out of the sea, very, very slowly. The kid doesn't understand why, but all the blood in his body suddenly runs cold. Hundreds of tiny fish are leaping about in the pools between these sandbanks, but soon they roll off into the water over the sides of the ginormous something. Several sharp points appear above the surface. The intrigued boy thinks they look like horns. They keep growing thicker and thicker the higher they rise. Soon they're towering over the massive Titanic, dwarfing the ship. These horns are the Kraken's dreaded arms. The boy is paralyzed by fear, but then he spots the monster's eye. It's as big as an elephant. It makes the kid come to his senses and dash away, screaming like there's no tomorrow. The boy's shouting attracts people. They gather along the ship's side, trying to spot what scared the child so much. And then they see. First one, then more and more passengers and crew members lean over the railing to get a better look. They aren't being careless, they're just in shock. Indeed, it's hard to believe your eyes when they tell you a dreaded beast is about to attack the ship you're on. Plus, it's dark, and no one can see clearly what that huge shadow is. But the next several minutes prove it's not a mirage. All of a sudden, the creature rises one of its monstrous arms and stretches it toward the vessel. It might very well be longer than the liner's entire hull. Women start screaming and fainting. Men seem to be just as terrified. Those who have managed to keep their heads clear sweep up kids and run for shelter. That's when the first powerful hit shakes the vessel. The Kraken's had enough waiting. It's ready for action. Panic engulfs people on board the Titanic. Running around aimlessly and screaming, they create chaos that makes the beast even more interested. Normally, the monster just wants to be left alone. It rests deep down on the ocean floor, using its long tentacles to tether itself to the bottom and lazily hunt for food. It only rises to the surface when the weather's unusually warm, or when it gets disturbed. The Titanic is probably too massive and loud. It draws the creature out of its slumber. When the beast gets to the surface and sees a large, glistening boat, wow, the thing mesmerizes the creature. It holds out one of its tentacles to touch the unusual construction. The material is hard, and the beast wonders if the thing will break when squeezed. Without wasting much time, it wraps several arms around the ship and tries to squish it. Tiny creatures fussing around, falling overboard, and making annoying high-pitched noises start to irritate the Kraken. It's getting angry. Easing its grip, the monster circles the Titanic several times, getting ready for the next attack. This time, the strike is much stronger. It bends the metal and makes it brittle. One more movement of a deft tentacle, and the ship starts to fill with water. The Kraken retreats, as if to enjoy the results of its efforts. But then, it notices the ship trying to speed up in futile attempts to put some distance between itself and the monster. People on board the Titanic heave a sigh of relief. The beast is nowhere in sight. Little do they know that the Kraken never lets its toys get away. The ship is beginning to slow down. Its rear part is slowly lifting up, and the front is going down underwater. Passengers and crew members are falling over onto the decks. Most of them are too scared to make a sound. That's why everything's happening in almost complete eerie silence. until the ship breaks into two parts under its own weight. The crash is so powerful that it scares away even the Kraken. Spooked, the beast dives back into the ocean, which creates a massive boiling whirlpool in that spot. The suction is dragging what's left of the Titanic to the depths of the ocean. The most tragic thing here, though, the Kraken isn't even interested in people on board the ship. This creature is content to munch on fish. It doesn't need bigger prey. It's the animal's curiosity that's now pulling the huge ship down to the bottom. Does the majestic liner have any hope? I think you know the answer. The water is bubbling under the fishing boat as if something is coming up out of the water. It gets closer and closer. The water seems to boil. Suddenly, you see giant jaws and glistening teeth. Seconds later, a huge shark jumps out of the water and crushes the boat in one bite. It was the Megalodon, the largest fish that ever existed on Earth. Now, we pictured the Megalodon as this, an enlarged version of the white shark for a long time. But scientists continue to argue about its appearance. So far, they agree that the image of this giant shark was wrong. Here's the data that scientists are sure of. Size, about 50 feet long. That's as big as a school bus and comparable to the length of a subway car. 8.5 times the height of an average person. Let's compare it to the modern white shark. The Megalodon is 3 times bigger, but that's just a rough estimate. We don't have a fully preserved skeleton of the Megalodon. That's because it didn't have any bones, but cartilage. Not much of that left in the 3.6 million years since the Megalodons went extinct. All that survived were teeth and a few vertebrae. By comparison, dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago. But their solid bones are perfectly preserved, and we have many different examples of their skeletons. Scientists have calculated the size of a Megalodon based on its teeth and jaw. Now, this is one tooth. It's about 7 inches long, bigger than the palm of your hand, and 3 times the size of a modern white shark's teeth. The Megalodon jaw was 6 feet wide and chalked up 5 rows of teeth, a total of 276 razor-sharp chompers. The other preserved remains are the vertebral column. It consists of 150 vertebrae, each 6 inches wide. They contain much calcium because, well, Megalodon love fresh cold milk. Nah, it's because the vertebrae had to withstand the enormous mass of a giant shark. Based on those fossils, scientists created a model and calculated only the approximate size of the Megalodon. But it could hardly have been any bigger. It's all about breathing. The bigger the fish, the more oxygen it needs, which means a larger gill area. That's the organ that filters the water and collects oxygen. If the Megalodon were any larger, it would have trouble breathing. So, scientists believe that 50 feet is the maximum size of an individual. On average, they were a few feet smaller. Now, let's talk weight. On average, one Megalodon weighed about 30 to 35 tons. By comparison, a white shark weighs 1 ton, which is 30 times less. Hey, trust me. A school bus is 4 times lighter at 7.5 tons. The weight of a Megalodon can be compared to an empty Boeing 737. But the modern blue whale beats the Megalodon in size and weight. 98 feet long versus 50, almost twice as long. Blue whale's weight is about 180 tons. That's like 6 Megalodons or 6 passenger planes, or like 33 adult elephants. Hey, don't you love the comparisons? Now, about the appearance of the Megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a white shark. The Megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin is moved backwards. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly and may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the Megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here's the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. We also have the evidence that Megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The Megalodon was a slow swimmer, though. It could only accelerate up to 11 miles per hour. In comparison, the modern white shark can reach 35 miles per hour in a dash for its meal. The fastest human swimmer could only go 6 miles per hour. Well, good luck with that. But the Megalodon had incredible mass. Though slow, its battering ram had tremendous power. The Megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the Megalodon was comparable to a large truck. But if the ram was successful, the prey was stunned and couldn't move. At this point, the Megalodon aimed at vulnerable spots, like the fins and tail of the prey. Scientists have found many ancient whale remains with Megalodon tooth marks. It turned out that the giant shark knew where its prey's vital organs were located and could strike at them. When the prey was immobilized, the Megalodon bared its teeth. An adult person could easily fit into its open jaw at full height, and according to various estimates, the bite force of the Megalodon was almost 11 tons. Now imagine the weight of 3 SUVs concentrated at the tip of a sharp tooth. That's 9 times the power of the largest white shark bite, and 6 times the power of the modern record holder for biting, the saltwater crocodile. Here, look at a map of where the remains of the Megalodon were found. South and North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. It was the master of all seas and was comfortable anywhere on our planet. We've even found some remains of the giant shark in freshwater sediments. Perhaps it wasn't afraid to enter rivers to hunt. Now, other scientists say that maybe the Megalodon wasn't even a predator, all because of its size. It couldn't swim fast. It couldn't even make short dashes like the white shark. If prey tried to escape, the Megalodon didn't rush into pursuit because it could never catch up with it. Another problem is the skeleton of the Megalodon. The cartilage is weaker than the bones, so the musculature of the giant shark was not as massive and robust in the first place. The Megalodon may even have been a scavenger and never got into fights. This is one of the reasons why ancient sharks became extinct. Megalodons like shallow, warm waters, with temperatures ranging from 53 degrees Fahrenheit. But over 3 million years ago, the climate turned colder. This deprived the Megalodons of territories and plenty of food. The primitive whales that had been the main diet of the giant sharks began to disappear. Faster predators took the remnants of food. The Megalodon started to starve. In evolution, a new player entered the field, the toothed whales, ancestors of the modern killer whales. They lived in packs and had bigger brains than the Megalodon. So, over time, they started to compete with the Megalodon. They took advantage of its clumsiness. A group of killer whales could easily win a competition against a giant shark. Many scientists believe this was the reason for the disappearance of the largest shark in the world. But there are theories that the Megalodon is still alive and roaming the dark waters of our planet. Several Australian fishers have allegedly encountered a shark of incredible size, but no one can confirm these testimonies. Fans of this theory believe that giant sharks can hide in deep waters away from human eyes. In the Mariana Trench, for example, it's the deepest place on our planet. It's deeper than if you stuck Mount Everest in the water, and we've even found the teeth of a Megalodon there. But science says that such a giant shark couldn't live in the Mariana Trench for many reasons. One, it's too cold. The Megalodon was probably a cold-blooded fish, so it had to use the warmth of its environment to survive. But the water in the Mariana Trench is cold, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because the deeper down, the less sunlight gets in there. The second reason is pressure. Every 30 feet deep increases the pressure by 1 atmosphere. That is, at the depth of 100 feet, the water presses you 3 times harder than you would feel it at the surface. The weak muscles and cartilage of the Megalodon wouldn't allow it to dive too deep into the Mariana Trench. And, most importantly, food. The farther from the ocean's surface, the fewer living organisms. Megalodons used to eat primitive whales, ranging from 10 to 20 feet. Small fish only inhabit the Mariana Trench. A Megalodon would never be able to catch one. And, judging by its size, all the Megalodon did was eat and then look for food again. Compare its weight to that of a human. The average human should get about 2,000 calories a day with an average weight of about 180 pounds. The Megalodon weighed 470 times that and needed many more calories. So, even all the fish inhabiting the Mariana Trench could hardly feed a Megalodon for even a few days. So, all these theories, of course, are not true. But still, it's just smart to be careful out there. Know what I mean?
It's night. A strong storm begins. You live in a coastal town and watch the raging sea through the window. Lightning strikes through the sky, huge waves crash against the shore, and a downpour turns the sand into wet clay. In the morning, a lot of fish are going to be washed ashore, you think, and go to bed. It's some strange noise that wakes you up. It's like hundreds of thousands of hands clapping near your window. You go outside and see a huge crowd of people standing by the sea. The popping sound is getting louder, and its source is tons of fish washed ashore. They've been here for several hours, but are still alive. They kick and beat their slippery bodies against the sand. You see carp, trout, sardines, and even a few huge great white sharks. They are full of energy, snapping their big toothy jaws. Somehow, all fish can now breathe air like humans. You help other people throw the fish back into the water. You can see them swim away into the sea depths, but some of them come up and swim close to the surface, enjoying fresh air. You've helped almost all the fish, except for the sharks. A rescue crane arrives. It lifts each of the sharks by its tail, one by one, then carries the fish toward the sea and lets it go. From the news, you learn that air-breathing fish have been washed ashore not only in your city. People find them on beaches all over the world. Scientists and marine researchers have already gone on a sea expedition to study this unique phenomenon. Later in the evening, they announce the results of their study. Now, every sea creature that has gills can also breathe through newly developed lungs. They can stay on land for as long as they want. They only need to have some water to drink, just like other living creatures. Fish absorb water and pass it through their gills. The gills have special receptors that draw the air out of the water and send it to the fish's bloodstream. This way, their bodies receive doses of oxygen needed for life. After this, carbon dioxide is formed. It enters the fish's blood, then passes through the gills and is released back into the water. The ability to breathe through gills has remained unchanged, but the anatomy of these creatures is different now. They've developed lungs and a respiratory tract. When a fish is in the water, it closes this tract and blocks access to the lungs. This way, water doesn't get there. But when the fish is on the surface, it closes its gills and opens access to the lungs through the mouth. This amazing metamorphosis doesn't bring significant changes to the world, yet. Dolphins and whales have always had lungs. Air passes through their nostrils, which are located on the top of their heads. This opening is called the blowhole. Dolphins come up to the surface, fill their lungs with air, and go under the water for a few minutes again. Now, not only dolphins, but also all the other sea creatures swim close to the surface. You take a boat to go on a sea trip and see the shocking phenomenon with your own eyes. The further you get from the shore, the more fish you notice in the water. They jump out high and dive back in like dolphins. They seem to be enjoying their new ability. There are so many of them. Several dozen fish jump into your boat. You throw them back into the sea. You see a huge fin and turn off the engine. A shark is swimming a few hundred feet away from you. It's about the size of your boat. Fortunately, it's distracted by other fish and is not going to hunt you. You turn around and go back to the shore. Dusk is falling. You can see city lights. The sea is filled with glowing jellyfish and phytoplankton. Because of this, the water is gleaming purple and blue. You're fascinated by this sight and don't notice the lights of the town suddenly turn off. You can hear people screaming. The closer you get to the shore, the louder the screams and sounds of something getting crushed. Finally, you arrive at the pier, get out of the boat, and find that a part of the embankment has been ruined. Boats are overturned, streetlights are broken, electrical wires are torn. A long trail of transparent, viscous liquid leads from the pier to the town. You slip on this slime once or twice. The streets are empty. Cars are abandoned, windows and houses are broken, there's garbage everywhere, and the road is also covered with ooze. You hear some kind of popping sound coming from a dark alley. It's approaching you. A small octopus appears on the road. It's moving in a spider-like manner. With the help of its tentacles, the creature climbs a car, jumps onto the wall, and crawls up. After this octopus, another one comes out. Several squid follow it. Some of them are clumsily crawling towards you. You take a step back. More and more squid and octopuses appear out of the dark alley. Some of them reach the size of a car. You see a bicycle lying on the ground and get on it. You're traveling through deserted streets with an army of octopuses crawling behind you. The ground starts shaking under the wheels of your bike. You hear a deafening roar of an unknown beast. You look back and immediately regret doing it. A huge monster, the size of a 5-story building and similar to a squid, breaks the wall of the nearest house with one hit of its colossal tentacle. The creature has come out of the darkest corner of the sea. Ever since the animal got a pair of lungs, it's been looking forward to taking a breath of fresh, clean air. Instincts brought it to the surface, where it smelled a lot of food. The city lights attracted the Kraken's attention. With its huge tentacles, the Kraken clings to the walls of buildings and the road and catches up with you. You see a tunnel straight ahead. You push the pedals of your bike as hard as you can and manage to get inside. But then you hear a strange sound behind your back. The Kraken, like an octopus, doesn't have an internal skeleton. Its body consists of muscles. That's why it can squeeze into any hole, like a liquid. The Kraken is chasing you in the tunnel, like a snake with dozens of tails, but its speed is slowing down. You accelerate and get out of the tunnel. Frightened, you travel as fast as you can and reach the nearest city by morning. Here you meet your neighbors and learn that sea monsters unexpectedly appeared in coastal cities all over the world. Fortunately, they don't stay on land for long. They've been living in the cold ocean depths for years, and their skin can't withstand sunlight. At dawn, the monsters return to the water. But sharks and other sea creatures come to the shore to have lunch more and more often. Years have passed, and they've learned to survive on land. They kick, wave their tails, push with their fins, and move clumsily along roads. The residents of coastal cities build huge walls along the beach to stop the invasion of fish and big squid. Sea creatures receive twice their usual amount of oxygen. They absorb it through the gills and fill their lungs with it. Thanks to this, the blood in their bodies circulates better and faster. This makes their muscles stronger and their brains smarter. It becomes difficult to catch fish. They easily break out of fishing nets and jump out of boats. This increases the population of all marine animals, and, especially, sharks. It becomes unsafe to travel by any kind of ship. A small fishing boat can be easily overturned by a shark. A huge cruise ship can come across several giant squid. Hundreds and thousands of years pass. More and more fish come to land. Evolution changes the structure of their bodies incredibly quickly. Some fish have grown elongated limbs. Their skin becomes slightly rougher. Their fins and tails remain, but their paws become longer. Imagine a shark with crocodile limbs. This is exactly what most fish look like now. Millions of years of evolution will pass, and fish will resemble people. But they will be covered with scales, with small fins behind the ears and a huge fin on the back. By this time, humanity will colonize many other planets, and fish will become the owners of Earth.
Some sharks have an eerie ability to spit out their stomach and then pull it back into place. Well, that would be handy. Most sharks eat huge amounts of food, but the problem is they can't digest everything they've gulped down. So they need a way to get rid of such stuff as sea turtle shells and beaks, bird feathers and bones, lobster claws and whatnot. And then these amazing creatures willingly barf up their whole stomach, along with all the contents. After the shark is done, it pulls its main digestive organ back in, and the entire process usually takes no more than a second. Some shark species, like great whites or mako, have a special eye-warming system. Their retina heats up their eyes and brain. This not only helps them detect movement better, but also improves resolution. As for the mako shark, this species often travels vertically across different temperatures. Unlike most people with only one movable jaw, sharks can freely move both their lower and upper jaws. This allows them to get a better grip on their meal and chew it up faster and more thoroughly. That's comforting. Sharks give birth to a large number of little ones at once. It depends on the species, of course, but let's say the blue shark is famous for producing more than 130 pups at a time. Great white sharks have a more powerful bite than most jungle cats. A 20-foot-long underwater hunter can produce a force of more than 4,000 pounds per square inch. And that's a bite 4 times stronger than that of a lion or tiger. People, with their measly 150 to 200 psi bites, aren't in the running whatsoever. Swell sharks defend themselves by swallowing huge amounts of water. Then the shark's body becomes twice its normal size, and this scares potential danger away. Sharks can grow more than 50,000 teeth during their lifetime, but not all of their teeth are the same. The strongest and most massive ones are at the front, and those closer to the back are smaller and not so powerful. But if the front teeth are damaged, these weaker ones can replace them. It's possible because sharks' teeth aren't as deeply rooted as humans and can move. Shark skin has the same feel as sandpaper. It's made of teeny, teeth-like scales. They point towards the animal's tail. This helps to reduce the friction that occurs when sharks move through the water. Whale sharks have extremely thick skin. In some places on their body, it can be 6 inches thick. It's one of the toughest in the animal world. Scientists have to make loads of effort if they want to get this creature's blood sample. Sharks have an incredible sense of smell, but besides that, they use one more sense to detect other animals. There are special pores around their head, near the nostrils, and under the snout. Those are special organs, something like second sight. Every creature generates a tiny electrical field. Thanks to the pores, sharks can spot these electrical fields and figure out where other animals are. Sharks are incredibly sharp-eared. They can hear their potential meal from 3,000 feet away. They can also catch low-frequency sounds, like the ones produced by a fish's contracting muscle tissue. Sharks have been around for more than 400 million years. It means they've lived through 4 out of 5 mass extinctions. This makes them way older than Mount Everest, humans, dinosaurs, and even trees. These creatures go back to the period when coral reefs were just beginning to form. Some shark species can jump out of the water, like the great white shark or the basking shark. They're known to leap from more than 8 feet up into the air. Thanks to this maneuver, they can catch such animals as seals or seabirds. But unless you're in South Africa, you aren't likely to see sharks jumping out of the water. Shark skeletons are made of muscle and cartilage, which are lighter and twice less dense than bones. This makes sharks more flexible, which allows them to make sharp turns when they're chasing other animals. Hammerhead sharks have a weirdly shaped head for a reason. Thanks to it, these creatures have incredible 360-degree vision. Their eyes are tilted a bit forward, and it allows them to have an overlapping field of view. The goblin shark's terrifying jaws are attached to elastic ligaments. They can unfold from the animal's snout for up to 3 inches. It allows the animal to catapult its mouth forward to catch other marine creatures. Sharks don't sleep as you do. Some species have to keep swimming all the time. Otherwise, water will stop flowing through their gills and they won't be able to breathe. Others do rest, but they don't enter an unconscious state. They just go into special rest periods. These creatures don't have eyelids. That's why their eyes remain always open, and their pupils monitor their surroundings. They also keep their mouth open so that the water can pass through their gills. Sharks can travel remarkably long distances without needing any rest, all thanks to their bizarre sleeping pattern. For example, great whites can swim distances of more than 2,000 miles without stopping to eat or rest. How come these creatures don't starve? They draw on the fat stored in their livers. By the way, this organ can compose up to 1/3 of the animal's body weight. Contrary to popular belief, sharks do not and cannot swim in reverse. Their tails propel them forward, and their pectoral fins help them to keep their balance and turn. It means that, anatomically, these animals can't move in any direction other than forward. Sharks have no vocal cords. They can't produce sounds to communicate with one another or express their emotions. That's why they have to use body movements, like twisting their bodies or flipping over. Sharks live in all of the world's oceans, but several species also inhabit freshwater rivers and lakes. For instance, bull sharks have been found in tropical rivers. They're also known to be able to swim between fresh and salt water. The smallest shark out there is the dwarf lantern shark. This unique creature doesn't grow longer than 8 inches, but the shark makes up for its tiny size in other ways. For example, some of its organs emit light, and since the creature lives in the shallow waters, this helps to camouflage it in the rays of sunlight. Blue sharks eat a lot, often more than they need. Some of this food can remain undigested for weeks till it's needed for energy. Sharks have something that looks similar to a tongue, but this organ is called the basial. It's the front section of the cartilage that goes from the shark's chest to its mouth. It doesn't move and is pretty much useless. The so-called tongue doesn't take part in the process of feeding. It isn't covered in taste buds. Its only real use might be that it supports some of the bones connecting the shark's gills. There are hundreds of shark species in the world, more precisely around 500. Some of them are pretty bizarre. Just look at the goblin, basking, or cookie-cutter shark. All these sharks vary in size, from several inches to dozens of feet long. They also live in absolutely different environments. Tiger sharks eat whatever they can get their jaws around. Some of the weirdest things they've munched on are video cameras, bags of money, license plates from almost any U.S. state, dog leashes, you name it. Each whale shark has a unique pattern on its skin. These spots and stripes can be used to identify individual sharks, just like fingerprints are used to identify people. The blunt-nosed six-gill shark can dive to a depth as great as 5 Empire State Buildings. Baby sharks are called pups. When they get born or hatch, they are already fully nourished, and if they choose to swim away from their mama shark, they don't need to hunt for food for at least several weeks. Uh-oh, did somebody say baby shark? You lie on the beach and decide to swim before going to bed. You go into the water up to your knees and notice a bluish-green glow in the distance. It seems to you that a gem reflects the moonlight, so you go ahead. Stop and get out of there! The glow floats in your direction, and you see a small fish through the water the size of a cat. Its skin glows. It doesn't look unsafe, but in fact, it's one of the most dangerous fish on the planet. You won't confuse the cookie-cutter shark with other marine predators. It has a round mouth armed with small, sharp teeth, which can leave a mark on a wooden boat the shape of cookies. Despite its size, this fish scares great white sharks, whales, hammerhead sharks, you name it. Once it even managed to damage the submarine with its bites. Usually this predator lives deep in the ocean, but there are cases when it attacks people. You're diving, looking at the seafloor, and suddenly notice that it begins to move. There are several types of fish that can merge with the sea landscape, and one of them is the angel shark. It looks like a stingray and seems quite friendly. Don't swim close to it. This predator is fast and has a strong jaw filled with sharp teeth. It's aggressive and can attack. You're swimming in the water with a mask and see a shoal of small fish in the distance. Something long flies into the shoal and begins to churn the water. Fish swim away in different directions. That must be the thresher shark catching prey. This shark has a long tail, similar to a whip, and it uses it to stun little fish. Of course, if the shark sees danger, it will wave its tail for defense, and you don't want to get under this strong strike. If you see a fish with small ridges over its eyes looking like horns, then know that it's most likely the horn shark. This predator is not aggressive. It calmly swims in seas and oceans and searches for its favorite foods – crabs, crayfish, prawns, and sea urchins. But it's still better not to approach it, as the shark has one of the strongest bites among all species, and its back and fins are covered with sharp spikes. And if you see one off the Normandy coast of France, it must be the French horn shark. Nah, I just made that up. One of the scariest sharks you can meet is the goblin shark. You can recognize it by its long tail and pinkish skin tone. It lives off the Japanese coast and got its name from its unusual appearance. Imagine that you're on a boat and see this shark swimming by. You take a stake out of the container and raise it over the ocean. The shark comes out of the water and reaches for food. At this point, it opens its mouth and a jaw with sharp teeth moving out of it grabs the meat from your hand. The shark slides the jaw back and swims away. Gee! To meet this shark, you need to go down to the bottom of the ocean. There's almost no light there, but you'll see it from afar. A glowing blue head. The shark's body is black and can't be seen, so it looks like the head is swimming by itself. This small predator can fit in an adult's palm, but it's better not to try to hold it if you don't want to meet with little sharp teeth. It's called ninja lantern shark. Nobody knows exactly why its head is glowing. It may be a way to lure prey, but there's also a theory that sharks communicate with each other using light. In the deep ocean waters, you can see a large snake. It seems like it's crawling on the seafloor. Its movements are fast and agile. This marine predator is also a shark. The frilled shark is similar to a snake, not only in appearance. It can also swallow prey larger than half of its 7-foot body. It has about 200 sharp teeth. You won't confuse it with a sea eel and other snake-like sea creatures. In the cold waters, where most sharks don't swim, you can meet this incredible creature. Most likely, you won't see it, because the short-fin mako shark swims too fast. It's about 35 miles per hour, which is faster than a leopard. Its prey has no chance of escape, and its enemies will never catch up with it. If you see a small glowing cave with unusual teeth looking like plates moving toward you from the depths, then you should immediately get out of the water. Although it's unlikely you can see this creature in person. The megamouth shark is one of the rarest sharks in the world. Scientists have not yet fully studied it. This fish, the size of a car, rarely closes its large mouth, which can easily fit an adult human. Fortunately, it eats plankton and won't do you harm. Yeah. You won't confuse this shark with anything else. The saw shark is a fish with a long nose similar to a saw. Those little cogs on the shark's nose are teeth that grow outwards. Each tooth is equipped with an electroreceptor that can sense the electric fields coming from other fish. In conditions of poor visibility, this shark can detect prey using its nose as a radar. The shark saw masters the saw as a professional swordsman and can hit strongly and accurately. A shark that will notice you much earlier than you do it is the hammerhead shark. Its eyes, placed on the size of the hammer, look in almost all directions at once. No fish can swim past this shark unnoticed. It uses its head not only for panoramic observation, but also for hunting. Hammerhead shark's favorite food is stingrays. They're like blankets, invisibly floating on the seafloor. But they can't hide from the sharp eyes of this shark. It uses the hammer to pin the stingrays to the ground. Hey, how about we get the saw shark and hammerhead shark together and do a little carpentry? I could use a chair. In the waters of the Arctic, if you are lucky enough, you can meet the Greenland shark. You can rarely find this large, slow, but majestic creature on the surface, since it dwells in the ocean depths. It can live for an impressive 300 years and longer, so some of them probably witnessed the times when all ships were made of wood. White and tiger sharks are some of the main species that pose a danger to people. You can identify them by the triangular fins sticking out of the water, but it's much easier to predict their appearance if you pay attention to the external environment. You're much more likely to meet sharks early in the morning or late in the evening. At this time, it's better to relax on the beach and not get into the water. Also, you should avoid river mouths with silt and muddy water. This is where tiger sharks, some of the most bad-tempered sharks in the world, most often live. But the main sign that sharks are somewhere around is fishing boats. If you see them on the horizon, don't go into the water. People use nets to catch large numbers of fish, and where there are a lot of fish, there's a shark swimming around and trying to get food. If you're in the water and already see a shark swimming towards you, then you still have a chance to survive. The main thing is not to panic, it says here. Don't splash and don't make sudden movements not to excite the shark. Don't swim away from it because it can think you're prey. The shark will circle around you, so don't lose sight of it. You can slowly swim to the shore until you reach shallow water, then quickly escape. But be careful, the shark can even get you out of there. If the shark still attacks you, then you'll have to fight for your life. Weak points of the shark are eyes and gills. And hey, let me know how it goes.
You're entering the territory of an amazing but abandoned wildlife park. The animal cages are overgrown with grass. Small houses have been left for a long time, and cobwebs and mold are everywhere. You walk into a dark building and see a green glow ahead. You approach and realize it's a large water tank. There's old green water in it, but you're attracted by the silhouette of a huge fish inside. You've just found a great white shark. Its body is in a formaldehyde solution, keeping it almost perfectly preserved. In 2012, Wildlife Wonderland in Australia ceased its operations. All the animals were moved from there, but the shark was forgotten. In 2018, urban explorer Luke McPherson visited this abandoned place and posted a video of the embalmed shark. The video got millions of views, and the shark got a name, Rosie. Since then, the park has attracted many tourists. Unfortunately, vandals were among them. The fish tank was damaged and graffiti was painted on it. People demanded to save the unusual find, and a few months later, when the shark tank was almost destroyed, it was moved to another working exhibition center. There, they restored the tank and renewed the liquid in it so the shark could retain its appearance. The next abandoned place is much scarier. Probably because of this, it attracts lots of visitors. We're in the Czech Republic, in the small village of Lukova. It's very beautiful here, with small houses, cozy streets, and rich nature. Among the trees, you suddenly notice the silhouette of an old chapel. Before you go inside, you realize it's completely abandoned. You see old bricks with faded paint on the walls and a rusting metal roof. It looks a little creepy. You make a step inside. If some travelers discovered this place at night, they would run away screaming from what they saw inside. There are patrons in the chapel. Most of them are sitting on benches, and some are standing. They don't move because they are plaster statues. But the most terrifying thing is that each statue is covered with a white sheet. In 1968, the chapel roof began to rot. Eventually, it collapsed, and residents stopped coming here. In 2014, an artist made some plaster statues and placed them here to make it seem as if the building was haunted. This installation attracts tourists from all over the world, which helps gather the money to restore the chapel. We're in the US now, driving along Vashon Highway. There's a dense forest on both sides of the road. You get to the bus stop and get out of the car. To see the strange find you've heard about, you need to go into the forest. You wade through bushes, mud, trees, and there you are. At first, you see nothing special, but then you look up. There's a rusty red bicycle, literally inside a tree. It's become a part of the forest. The wheels and handlebars stick out, and everything else is inside the trunk. It turns out that in 1954, a local boy was given a bicycle, but he was not very happy with his gift. The tires were very thin and hard, and the handlebar looked like it came from a child's tricycle. One day, this boy was playing in the woods with his friends, and only he had a bicycle. When everyone started to go home, the boy just left the bike by the tree. The tree continued to grow, and the bike became part of it. Let's leave cold, dark places and come right to the center of the Southern California desert. The sun is very hot, and there's no one around. Only sand, dry brush, and mountains are in the distance. A couple of hours have passed. You're thirsty. The sun burns your skin, and suddenly you see water. Or is it a mirage? You approach in hopes it isn't. Yes, this is real water, but it's not an oasis. Here, in the middle of the desert, there's an unmarked swimming pool. What a pleasure it is to jump inside. It's called a social pool. An artist built it in the summer of 2014. Absolutely anyone can use this pool, but not everyone will be able to find it. Unfortunately, there's only a carcass left of it today. Abandoned places don't just hold creepy and weird things. Some finds can make the person who found them rich. We're going to the Pigalle Red Light District in Paris. This is a residential area, and nothing looks abandoned. You go into one of these houses. You meet people at the entrance who check their mail in the box. You go up the stairs and stop at the door to a certain apartment. It looks dilapidated. You open it and step inside. What you see here reminds you of a creepy scene from a haunted house movie. All the furniture and decorations are not from this century. The whole apartment looks like an antique. A thick layer of dust covers every inch of this place. Old, creepy dolls and stuffed toys lie on the tables and the floor. Add a disturbing tune from a music box, and you have a full horror set. You feel like you've traveled a century back in time. And in a sense, it's true. The owner of the apartment moved out in the 1940s. She left everything as it was. The apartment was left untouched for 70 years. It was discovered in 2010 when people began to evaluate the property of the apartment's owner. She lived somewhere else and didn't tell anyone about the place. When appraisers opened the apartment, they found a painting by the Italian artist Giovanni Boldini, which he created in the 19th century. This painting was sold for $2.5 million. Now we go to another desert, in Namibia. Here, among the dunes, not far from the ocean coast, you find a dried-up lagoon and an old sunken ship half buried in the sand, or rather, what's left of it. The age of this Portuguese vessel is about 500 years. It originally sailed from Lisbon in 1533 and disappeared near a Namibian diamond mining city. Walking among the wreckage, you can find ship parts from those times, but the most interesting thing is a chest with gold coins. The net worth of the entire ship, along with the valuable treasure, is estimated at over $12 million. The wreckage was discovered by geologists in 2008, but its full glory was only uncovered 8 years later. And now you're walking down New York streets, passing a dark, deserted alley where you see some trash bins. You notice a painted canvas sticking out of one of them. You take it out of the trash, and it turns out to be a painting. The image isn't very clear, but it looks beautiful. You decide a piece of art doesn't belong in the trash and take it home. For the next 4 years, you try to find out something about this painting, and one day, on a website about antique stuff, you find out that this painting is a missing art masterpiece worth $1 million. This is what happened to a woman from New York in 2003. When she found the painting in the trash, she immediately felt the power emanating from it. The woman learned the painting was stolen from its owner in 1989. She returned it and received $15,000 as a reward. The painting, called Tres Personajes, was drawn by the Mexican artist Rufino Tamayo in 1970. A collector bought this work of art as a gift for his wife, but a few years later, the painting was stolen while the couple was moving into a new home. Now let's finish our journey with the most grandiose and large-scale find. We're in Turkey. You've been living in an old house for a very long time, and you want to redecorate the place. You throw out all of your obsolete stuff, and then remember, you have an old basement. You never needed it before, but now you decide to turn it into a room. You break down a wall and discover a tunnel that leads underground. Excited, you go there and realize the tunnel doesn't just lead to a secret room. It leads to a colossal underground city. In 1963, a man from Turkey discovered an ancient city going down as deep as 18 floors. It could accommodate about 20,000 inhabitants, livestock, and food supplies. It's not just a maze of tunnels. There is a chapel, a school, stables, kitchens, and other attributes of civilization. The city was founded in the Byzantine era over 1,000 years ago. It was likely built as a shelter from natural disasters and wars. The coolest detail, though, is that it's not the only underground town. It adjoins many other tunnels that stretch for several miles.
So you're swimming 2 miles down at the bottom of the ocean. Don't ask me how, just play along. It's cold and the pressure is intense. No fish in sight. Then you notice a green shiny thing. It's a cookie cutter shark. Its neck glows in the dark to attract fish and other delicious treats. The shark doesn't look like much. It's small, about the size of a cat. It has brown skin and large green eyes. But looks can be deceiving. Every night, this creature rises to the surface and goes after great white sharks, whales, even swordfish. If you look closely, you'll see a round mouth with a bunch of sharp teeth in it. They don't just bite, they work kind of like a saw. This one's called a cookie cutter shark because when it sees something delicious, it takes a cookie-shaped bite out of it. These sharks have even been known to disable submarines. Wonder what flavor they are. Our next shark is about the length of a car. Only about 100 of these sharks have ever been seen, but if you met one, you'd never forget it. It has a big mouth, a huge mouth, a mega mouth, like me. It's the mega mouth shark. You could easily fit in it if you curled yourself up. They're not dangerous though, not to humans. They feed by swimming around with their mouths open, filtering out plankton and other underwater goodies. The shark has special organs in its mouth that glow, attracting little crustaceans. It swims deep in the ocean in total darkness. Probably has a great smile though. Thresher sharks also have a huge body part, the tail. It's almost half the length of the shark itself, and it looks like a helicopter blade. It's one of the few animals that hunts using its tail. The shark sneaks up on a school of fish and starts to shake its moneymaker. This freaks out some of the fish, which is exactly the plan. In a pinch, it can also use its tail to defend itself. The best thing about this shark, it doesn't attack people. The angel shark. There are quite a few types of angel shark out there, but they're more shark than angel. They're flat like stingrays, and their skin is covered with patterns that help them blend in with the seafloor. Because of this disguise, divers sometimes accidentally touch them, which isn't the best idea. They're fast and have powerful jaws. Still, they prefer the taste of small fish to you. The horn shark has two ridges that look like horns right above its eyes. It's definitely the grandpa of the shark world. Not aggressive, swims pretty slowly, and is up late almost every night. Its two favorite meals, sea urchins and crustaceans. It moves its fin on the seafloor almost as if it had paws. But don't underestimate this guy. It has one of the strongest bites of any shark. It needs those strong teeth to crush the shells of its late-night meals. And if something tries to attack it, watch out. Horned sharks have sharp spikes on their fins. The award for the ugliest shark goes to the goblin shark, and it's not even close. From the outside, it already looks kinda weird and is about the size of a pink underwater motorbike. It has a long tail and a seriously long nose. It lives way down in the depths of the ocean and loves to eat squid. It's not as fast as its relatives, but it's way more sneaky. It has a secret squid catching technique which is totally wild. The shark swims behind the squid. It's catching up, getting closer and closer, but the squid isn't slowing down, no way. It looks like the poor goblin shark won't have any lunch today. Then it opens its mouth. Its jaw is attached to folds of skin that mean it can literally throw its jaw out of its mouth. And it's a shark, so those teeth are sharp. That extra reach helps it grab its lunch, and when the meal's over, it pops its jaw back in its mouth. These sharks have been seen many times off the coast of Japan. They're actually named after the goblins in Japanese myths and fairy tales. There's only one thing out there cooler than a ninja shark. It's the ninja lantern shark. Imagine there's a tube you can slide down that takes you to the bottom of the ocean. It's too dark, you can't see anything. Suddenly, a glowing dot, moving around in the distance. It's coming closer, shooting towards you. It's a blue glowing head. Worse, it looks like this head doesn't have a body attached to it. The ninja lantern shark has black skin, so it's almost invisible in the dark. It's only the size of a human arm, but its small, sharp teeth are no joke. No one really knows why this shark glows. Maybe to attract tasty fish? Another theory out there is that it uses this light to communicate with its friends. It has friends? The hammerhead shark. These ferocious sharks can weigh up to half a ton. They live in tropical waters all over the world, and they're one of the most recognizable sharks out there. Their eyes really are located on the sides of their hammerhead. This means they can see in almost all directions. They even have special neck muscles to lift their head up and down just to see that little bit better. Their favorite food? Stingrays. You know, those flat things that swim along the seafloor, camouflaged to look like sand and bits of rock. Stingrays get by blending in with their surroundings. Danger mostly just swims by. But the hammerhead's eyes see everything. Uh-oh. Great white sharks, hammerheads, and other large sharks live for about 25 years. But one shark can live much, much longer. The Greenland shark can live anywhere from 300 to 500 years. It lives mostly in the North Atlantic and Arctic oceans. It loves to swim deep down where it's dark, so it uses its nose to sniff out food. Since it spends so much time down there, it's figured out how to withstand the strong pressure. It's one of the oldest living, largest, and slowest fish on Earth. Just imagine, you're on an Arctic cruise and you see one of these sharks moving slowly through the freezing cold water. It might be 400 years older than you. Most sharks are omnivorous. They can go after dolphins, other sharks, crabs, sea urchins, smaller or even larger fish, hot dogs. Kidding about the hot dogs. But the bonnethead shark is a bit different. It eats algae for about half its meals. It's actually related to the hammerhead shark, but its head looks more like a shovel. Can you dig it? If you see this guy swimming around, you might think it's a sea snake or a huge water worm. Frilled sharks like to swim way down at the bottom of the ocean, like a lot of sharks. When they're chasing something delicious, they move kind of like a snake. And just like a snake, they like to gulp down their lunch all in one piece. But that doesn't mean they don't have teeth. They have about 200 nice and sharp ones. The saw shark has a long, flat, and seriously spiky nose. Those teeth on its nose never stop growing. Each tooth is equipped with electric receptors to help the saw shark feel around for nearby fish, like a ship's radar. When dinner's nearby, the shark swims up and strikes with its nose, waving it around like a knight showing off his skills. Meanwhile, you won't have time to blink if this guy floats past. Did you see it? How about now? Meet the fastest shark in the world, the short-fin mako shark. It can swim up to 35 miles per hour. That doesn't seem that quick on land, but underwater, that's fast. Slower than a cheetah, but faster than most dogs. It's warm-blooded, which is super rare for a shark. That helps it swim to cold and distant places where an ordinary shark simply wouldn't survive. The swordfish goes much faster. It can swim up to 60 miles per hour. It's not a shark, but it's still an amazing creature. In a race, the swordfish will usually come out on top, but it's not just fast, it's ingeniously fast. It has a gland next to its nose that pumps out a special oil. This oil spreads through its nose and comes out through tiny holes. This special oil is waterproof, which lets the swordfish glide through the water at high speed.